right, welcome back to the Better Contractor. Today we have Dontae Gonzales on with Robotic Scapes. Dontae, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you for having me on here. Really appreciate it.
Super excited to have you. As you can tell, well, we have Travis. I can't forget about Travis. Hey, Travis.
Seem ready? Yeah.
So, as you can tell from Dante's title or name of his company, it's not your typical landscape lawn care company, Robotic Scapes. So, excited to have him on and just kind of learn something a little different, a little bit different aspect. For you, those of you who are joining us on YouTube, you can tell Dante is still young, unlike Travis and I, who are seasoned veterans, right, Travis? Yeah, yeah.
Little
That's,
gray in
that's what
there.
that hair's.
Yeah.
That's what that gray hair's from. Mine's coming in though, starting to.
Distinguished, distinguished. You've been some
Yeah.
places.
Um, but Dante, tell us a little bit about your career path so far and kind of, what got you to where you are today.
Yeah, so first off, thank you for having me. So I was born and raised in Denver, Colorado. Graduated in high school in 2017. After high school, I really had three options. It was either join college, uh, you know, find a trade job, or enlist in the military. And I enlisted in the military. I was a 19 Delta Cav Scout. We did reconnaissance, the eyes and ears of the Army. Very great experience. I always encourage, everyone I talk to, to join it, to join. Very good opportunity. You get a lot of characteristics, and you find great leaders, and the military has the best leaders in the world. So you learn from these great leaders. So I had the opportunity to, travel parts of Europe, parts of the Middle East. I did a tour in Syria, uh, and then we got back in 2020. Got the opportunity to try out for the sniper section, and it was a great run, and I was, finished my career off as a sniper. Uh, then, I decided to leave the Army. Did 3 years, 22 weeks. That was my exact contract. So got out in January 2021, and that was the start of my landscaping, or entering the landscaping industry. In January 2021, I had didn't know what I really wanted to do. I was in Fort Hood, Texas at the time, and I didn't want to go back home. And so I seen Austin. It was about an hour and 20 minutes. And so I, ended up, looking around the city, and, fell in love with it. And, ended up moving down here. And when I moved down here, I didn't know anybody, right? I moved down here solely for business and to, serve the community and do something great. So started in the landscaping industry. And, this is also give a little trick out to anybody listening who wants to start a company with, a couple $100. So what we had done, right, and what made us so successful running, the traditional residential landscaping company is we gave ourselves a timeline, and we gave ourselves goals, right? And I don't know if you guys ever heard the term "bring the money in" before you start spending all this money, right? So, I could have bought all this equipment, spent $10,000 in equipment, but what we had started off first was to bring the money in, right? So what I mean by that is I spent probably $250 on 3,000 business cards, and spent $200 in gas, and about 120 hours a month, right? January, February, door to door, right? We ended up getting, by March, we ended up getting 20 residential clients, and we hadn't spent a dime yet. So we told them that we would start in March, the end of March, and we would be ready to start servicing their property. So then that's when we started to, spending money on equipment, and we, started from there. uh, we, over the time, we built to 40 residentials. We had an ABA clinic here in Austin, and an apartment, so we had two commercial properties. We were doing really great. I had three trucks. We had two crews working about 35 hours a week. So we were pretty busy. December 2021, the same year, we lost, roughly 35% of our customers. and I took a bigger bite than I can chew, and we did a big job, and we didn't do it correctly, and I did the right thing, and I subcontracted it out, and it kind of put us in the hole. So, me not knowing anybody here and not having anybody help, I was just, finding people online and, Indeed and, sources like that. And so it was very hard for me to, pivot back. I was kind of in the hole. So the best move that I could have made was just to sell everything, kept one of the trucks, but I sold two of the trucks. They had two storage units full of tools, so sold everything off, and then kind of took a month off, kind of just wanted to, sit back and see what I wanted to do after that. And it's a favorite quote by Elon Musk, and he says, "Having a company is like having a kid, right?" And it was very sad to see, the company that you had put in everything in, right? And I didn't see a huge return. It was just the thrill of it and the innovation. And when I got into the business, I didn't know anything business wise, right? I didn't know HR, marketing, logistics, operations. I didn't know any of that. I honestly didn't even know that exist until I got into the business world, and I just learned from experience, and there was times where I would talk to clients and people, and I would learn from them through experience. So it was a great opportunity. uh so took a month off. It was very sad, but we had to keep pushing, and keep finding something we wanted to do. So in 2022, I had found a very great company here in Austin, Clean Scapes. One of my great mentors and a great leader, Ivan Giraldo. He was a very good man and very knowledgeable. So I was brought on to integrate robotics into Austin's operations, and when we had first started, there wasn't no schedule. We just were just looking around and searching, like, what is the robotic industry looking like right now, and how can we integrate that into our operations? So we had, done, we had partnered with some very good companies in the robotic industry. uh, when we had first started, there was no schedule. When I came in, I built a schedule. We were one of the first crews to be all electric besides our truck. So we had electric weed eater, electric blower, electric trimmer, electric mower. Everything was fully electric besides, the truck. So we were fully electric, and it was a lot of trial and error. It was a lot of mess ups, a lot of frustration out in the field, dealing with this technology, and trying to get the job done. But we powered through it, and with innovative ways we figured out, what type of properties are uh very good for this type of robot. Different type of robotics serve different types of properties, right? That's one of the main things that I found out, is that these robotics, they have their own, I like to think they have their own personalities, right? So in each company, they're built a little bit different. So you kind of see which ones you want to put in certain areas. So that's one of the key things that we learn. uh so basically what we had done was we turned uh, a full year work schedule, a full season schedule, into a five-man crew, and we shrunk it down to a two-man crew and three robots. And for the first time in I still remember this, the first time where we actually, the first week of our actual schedule, where we had two guys, the robotic crew leader and the robotic, assistant. They were out there, and they would set these robotics in autonomous, and then they would go out and carry on details. So for the first time ever, you're seeing, uh, you know, workers working aside robotics. And that's when I was like, the technology is here. The technology is ready. We are doing good. Out of 50 plus properties, we ended up managing on average a 48 GP, right? So that's tremendous with the cost of robotics, the cost of electric equipment. So it was very good. So I stuck with Cleanscapes for 2 years. December 1st in last year, unfortunately, we parted ways, and that's when I had, January 1st, 2024, had uh, launched Robotic Scapes, and we're here now.
Okay, so you're getting ready to kick off basically for the 24 season, correct?
Right. Yep.
Awesome. Well, kind of going back, you mentioned, the previous business, Donnie's Landscape, and what I love about that story, obviously it ended, but what I love about the story is that you didn't give up.
Right.
And that's, to me, that's one of the key elements of entrepreneurship is, you look at statistics. There's a lot of businesses that don't make it past 1 year. There's less that make it to 5, and a whole heck of a lot less that make it to 10. The differentiator, I guess, between the common person and an entrepreneur is the entrepreneur doesn't give up. So I love your pivot, but then you also grabbed a mentor in the process, for someone who has been there, who has done that. And then you're transitioning now back into, a second attempt. And the robotic scapes, Travis, as we all know, if you listen to any podcast at all, loves innovation and technology.
Right.
But the robotic scapes is so interesting to me because it's new, and I look at it as if I can have this robotic mower and it can do kind of the mundane task of a job site. So a lawn care, let's say a lawn site, but then I can take my human element and I can have them do the detail work. So while that they get that robotic mower going, and then they can go do the trimming, do some landscape maintenance, actually take the time to actually beautify that property while that mower is doing its thing. They're doing that detail work. And to me, with that model, you should really be able to actually provide the customer actually a better service than before because you have that time element back for the human to do the detail work. Is that kind of what you're envisioning with robotic scapes?
Short-term vision, yes. Long-term vision, 2030, 2035, we're seeing, Tesla coming out with these human droids and stuff, and we believe that, the vision is that you'll see a community done by 100% robotics. Weed eating, blowing, edging, and mowing. That's the long-term vision.
That's so crazy to think about, but it's also like you said though, it's the stuff's there. It's just implementing it into
Right.
current society. Travis, I can tell by your face.
Man, we could talk for
You got
hours
something to
on
say.
this. I love your optimism on the 2030. I think we have no idea what'll be out there in 2030. You see drones potentially doing the trimming
Right.
as opposed
Yeah.
to even robotics. There's drones that have attachments and capabilities now that are pretty impressive. Obviously, some things have to evolve, but the way that everything is evolving and going so fast, yeah, it's hard to keep up with, and it's hard to predict. You're basically predicting on what you know now, but the evolution, it's not addition, it's multiplication, it's compounding, and then convergence. But one of the things I love, because I've talked to several companies that are either integrating robotics into the mowing operations and the teams, either wholly or testing it out. But one of those takeaways is a lot with what Brent was talking about is it ties into the talent challenge as well, and not so much that
Right.
it's going to get rid of your crews, but it's actually filling a need in that the areas where based on conversations and what we've had is the areas where those robotics are excelling at is the low skill and obviously low pay. If it's a low skill position where you're just mowing open areas, you don't really pay a lot for those types of, and so those are typically some of the hardest positions to fill because nobody
Right.
wants to live minimum wage for mowing. So your other option is you take a high skilled person that could be adding value in hardscaping or other detail work, and you go put them in this low value, low skill operation. So being able to integrate robotics into that type of thing frees up that time. You can go make more money other places. And then there's several different business models coming out of that, whether you leave the robotics there or and it can be kind of a continuous operation. I was talking to one company where they're taking the robots, they have larger ones, and they're deploying them to mow the yard while the detail work and the hardscaping is being done. and they're cruising. They go from job to, but at the end of the night, they're taking those robotic mowers and dropping them off on the next day's job. Um,
Right.
and it's going and doing that mowing work throughout some of the nighttime hours when their crews go home, and it's getting 2 or 3 more hours worth of work done for them, which doing the impossible, what wasn't even possible. And then because they're electric, and a lot of these too, they're the noise component where it's muted or mitigated too. So just tons of potential and tons of possibilities. I love seeing this.
Right, and that was actually, one of the main reasons why I started Robotic Scapes, and we were founded off of three main reasons, right? Number one being a labor shortage, right? For, the last decade, we've been struggling to, find good talent and to retain good talent, right? And it's actually not a labor shortage, just you would call it a labor surplus because there's more, there's more people that can, there's more people out there and they have options, and you kind of see the triangle, and at the end of the day, landscaping is a tough industry, and it kind of falls at the lower spectrum, like you were saying, and nobody wants to do that. That's like the last choice, right? And so, labor shortage, right? We turn to robotics. Number two, sustainability. For the first time in history, we're able to be sustainable and have a very positive impact on Mother Nature, right? So that's another big key. And number three is noise reduction. This is not a big this should be a big issue in the landscaping industry, because it's not talked about a lot. It's kind of ignored. But if you actually go and talk to these people that in homeowners, residentials, Class A buildings, right? You go and show up at this Class A building, and these executives are having meetings, and if you're seeing that property 52 times a week or 42 times a week, or whatever the case may be, that's that's 90% of the year that they got to hear you every week, right? So
Or even homes, residential. There's more and more people working
residentials,
remote, and they're on calls and stuff too. So
right?
Well,
We're,
that
we're,
we'll tie this into even work comp. So my business, the safety is a huge aspect. So, there's a lot of hearing, testing that even takes place. So I look at that even with you guys where you're running a weed eater or whatever, a hedge trimmer a lot. If you can reduce that noise, you're actually, it's a safety thing as well.
yeah,
it means
it's
they can
yeah,
crank their AirPods up more.
Yes. Yeah. Most of them are AirPods in anyway now. So
yeah.
maybe it doesn't matter.
They made really great gas tools. They were phenomenal. They were great. They got the job done, but they were just too loud. And I think, my opinion is that the robotic mowers and the electric tools, they are here. Uh, the people that say that it's the technology isn't here is the people who don't use them, right? I grew up using gas and electric equipment. And I'll tell you, on a commercial level, you can get the job done, meaning that on a residential, you can most definitely get the job done, right? So it is here. I just think the number one challenge of transitioning, and a lot of people do not think about it a lot, is the charging infrastructure, right? Is how do I get all these electric equipment into my facility, right? And you look at a lot of these landscaping companies, and they're not ready yet, right? The infrastructure is not ready yet. So we want to be a big help in that as well. In the future, having helping other companies transitioning to electric and being there for them as well, because we're founded off of that.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. We had and actually, Travis, I'll talk to you later. We need to have this guy on the podcast, but there was a company we met at the GIE Expo that had handheld battery powered uh, lawn care equipment. And what stuck out, so they were fairly new, but what stuck out to me about them is how fast they could charge their batteries. So that's kind of been an issue in the past with some brands is you had to have multiple batteries that you're constantly switching out. They had a fuel cell that you would purchase that would sit in the truck or in your job trailer or whatever. And then you would basically, I think it was 8 minutes, wasn't it, Travis?
Mhm.
It's super quick, crazy. Um, that's a game changer where you can start charging a battery to full capacity within 8 minutes on a job site. So that would be an interesting one to have on, but that does change. It's another one of those innovation things, for
Right.
a company like Robotic Scapes or whatever.
challenges are going to be with the battery and the expense of them and the lithium, and they've gotten a lot better. There's definitely going to be some evolutions in that as the market is now demanding it. But one incredible new, I guess, industry rising out of this, and just completely overturning and providing options that just were never there before, and so many auxiliary. And there's definitely challenges, as with every evolution, but already seeing that expand the way it is, and even at these trade shows, especially like the Equip Expo, there was so much robotics, AIs, drones, electric power, and almost every major player is playing in it because it's solving problems. And so I love Clean Scapes too, being forward thinking on that. It's
Yeah.
anytime that you're gonna, a lot of people have short term vision in that, and it's not just one specific industry, but all, when you're talking about innovation, you're basically planning for the future. You are looking at the timeline horizon of a year or 2 or 3 years down the road. Where are we going to be, and preparing for that. And it's not easy to do. You really have to have your numbers in place. You have to have a team that can pull it off, and there's an R&D phase that needs to be done correctly. Evaluating, what is this? How does it impact our industry, both for good and for bad? And how do we potentially leverage it? And then you're measuring that against three things: is it's not right, it's not ready for you, so you're going to scrap it. Or maybe it is the great technology, or it's got some really good promise. We're maybe not ready for it right now, or it's not ready. Let's shelve it and we'll reevaluate it in 3 months, 6 months, a year. Or 100% it fits in, we found the pathway and we're going to scale it. So you're going to scrap it, shelve it, or scale it. But you have to have a really good evaluation period and really understanding what is it that we're hoping to understand and get out of this, understanding innovation cycles and principles, to integrate that. But it's not something that everybody's skilled at, and it's not something that a lot of companies, and that's where you end up getting disrupted in negative ways, is you're not looking that far out. You're not adopting, because change too is another challenge or a problem, in that even when you do find something, the change management process is usually a big inhibitor. We as humans and a species don't like change typically unless you've been conditioned for it. So you're going to resist it naturally, but then also figuring out ways that you can integrate new changes. And it's not just technology, but it's processes and procedures too. You have to have a really good change management plan, and it's typically an overtime integration of whatever this new process or technology is, not a complete rip and replace. And there's other methods too where you can run them in parallel. So it's, you've identified a new innovation or technology or process, and you're going to create, and a lot of times this is very successful, you create an R&D team, and it sounds like that's what you were on as far as that team. You're going to go run this in the environment and test out the new technology. And as things evolve, you're better off and better prepared for, if when the disruption comes and you need to rely on new technology, whether it's a labor shortage or you need to find more efficient ways and you need to integrate this robotic technology, you're better off because now it's at least in your ecosystem. But it's a cold start, in the sense that you've now got to find ways to integrate that into the main operation, which isn't easy. The more successful ones, regardless of the industry, is they find ways. It might be running in parallel for a period of time, but then they're slowly integrating these different components into the main operation so that it's a warm handover, as opposed to a very blunt, we need it now, we need to find a way to integrate it, which oftentimes has significant challenges, and it causes failure or additional capital and time to try and integrate that successfully. But ultimately, those three buckets are where everybody falls out in the innovation. Either they're not adopting it, and those are the ones that when they come up against where they've got to find a new way to do something, innovation, technology, equipment, whatever, um, they've got to then integrate it, which most oftentimes it's, they can't do it successfully. And what happens is they try and compensate with expending large amounts of capital to try and get there, but again usually fail. Or the ones that run it, where they have an R&D department running it in parallel, that's better because at least they're familiar and they're working through some of the stuff, but it's still a cold handover if they're not constant. The ones that have been successful, is they find ways to, once the technology's kind of shaken out, or the innovation or the process, whatever, is shaken out a little bit, they then slowly integrate it into their organization. Those are ones historically that have been way more successful. So I loved hearing you talk about that, and what a cool opportunity for you to take on something, and now you're transitioning into leveraging those skills, talents, abilities into creating a whole new realm of where essentially the industry is expecting to go.
Right. And we understand that, change can be difficult. And that's what really, makes us different is that we're really focused on how can we make it more convenient? How can we be there for them? And how can, because the technology can be very daunting at times, and it's like, I don't know what this is, I haven't seen this work on other people's properties. Am I the first one? Am I, you know what I'm saying? So it's stuff like that, and we understand that. So our focus is making it more convenient for our clients, being there for them, and just teaching them and being a teacher for them. Even showing them how it works, and getting them logged in on through the apps, and stuff like that.
Uh, One of the technologies that I saw at the Equip Expo and that I've had conversations with people is, there's kind of these Roomba robotic mowers where people can have it at their house and it'll dock itself, and you set up the perimeter, or it maps out whichever one. But and it just goes out every day. It's just cutting a little bit. And so it
Microblade.
and it's just
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just constantly going out and cutting just a little, and that's how, like, you can be smaller, and it's not having to do major operations and cut an inch or so it's just constantly every day trimming up the yard, and it's just keeping it nice and maintained and fresh. I see something like that with, I mean, drone technology has to evolve a little bit too, with battery power and longevity, and it's always the weight distribution versus the battery power and longevity based off what you're doing. But could you do something with that regarding tree trimming? So long as that thing is just flying around and just constantly just nipping at, could you do hedges that way? Could you do tree? Same concept. I mean, some evolutions need to happen with the technology, but just micro. You have this little fleet that goes out every morning at 3:30 a.m. I'll see
Yeah.
them out there if I'm not employing them. And it just boom takes care of your yard and flies back into the shed and docks itself or whatever. I totally see a future, uh,
Yeah.
5, 10 years, in that. I mean,
By the time
Yeah.
you wake up, you're looking at a beautiful yard.
Yeah, the nice part about that is it's always like you said, it's always perfect. Where now it gets, especially in the springtime around, I'm in Illinois. Springtime, this looks rough, by the time a week has gone by, and then you mow it, then it looks good again, but then it looks rough. So this would keep it always looking freshly mowed, which is really cool.
and you subcontract that out to your neighbor. So as your sun goes down, your drones are mowing the neighbor's yard, and it gives you $50 or whatever. And
Yeah.
right before sun up, they come back, charge up right before sun up. It does your yard, and then landscaping lawn care businesses turn into, they lease out these drone operations for one per two households or whatever, and they'll come do maintenance and repair. Like, the
Yeah.
sky's the limit, man.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm excited to see what you do with this, because I think most industries will have these periods where something's been done the same way for a long period of time. Lawn care has been one of those. It's been done as we see it today for a long period of time. And then you'll have something like this where it's a disruptor, a technology or whatever come into play. And that's what's happening here. And you'll have people like yourself who adopt it fully, and you'll have some people it's like, I'm not going to do it. So
Right.
I'm very curious to see, we're sitting here talking today about like a Roomba style vacuum lawnmower, which is cool to us in 2024. 2028, 30, we may laugh at that by what is out at that point. But either way, the companies who adopted it early and didn't just like foo it and like, that's going to be a dud, when most likely it will not be a dud, especially with our labor
Right.
market. Because I view this as, I'm one who likes a company to have a very much a personable human element. So a lot of people's pushback on an industry like this is you can't have that. I don't view that as true, especially in this industry, because the way I look at it is that's a task that is a little bit easier. It is a little bit difficult to find an employee to do it, not just do it, but then do it and stay with you long term. I look at like a lot of the companies that's mowed, at my house. It's different people. usually pretty frequently. The company we used last year, they had the same guy all year, but that's a rarity. Usually it's a
Right.
different guy every few months, it seems like. So
Yeah.
I'm not building a connection with him anyway because the turnover is so high. So if you can take something like this technology and do that task, pay someone a little bit more to run that crew, even though there might be one less person on it, but that person's then doing a better job, a better quality of service. They retain that employee. I then build a connection with that employee because, hey, I like him. He's doing a good job. He's been there for a full year. It actually can improve the human element instead of taking it away. So I think that's a little bit of a different approach and mindset to it. But I'm curious to see how companies like yourself, especially just getting started, and actually titling your company along the lines of what you're doing as well, or naming your company along those lines. Very
Right.
curious to see how you do this first year.
Right. And I think the key thing, and there's this saying, it goes, find the Mr. and Mrs. Smiths. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but that's what we're looking for right now. Putting these robotics on these certain properties and kind of, influencing, the communities. In the springtime in March, we're working with this community here in Austin where it's an HOA, and we're planning on, it's 210 homes, and we're planning on fully robotic, that pulling fully automating the turf on there, and then doing all electric, right? We're working with them, and we're trying to, get it done. So that's the big the mountain we got to climb. So we're just want to start off by one, so.
Is there any specific technology or robotic that you're gravitating towards? Did you go through an evaluation period, and is there anything that you've settled on that you can discuss?
Yeah, so I've partnered with a very great company called Sunseeker. I've been in the robotic industry for a couple of years now, and I'm a robotic head, so I love robotics. And when I seen this technology for the very first time, it blew my mind. It was like, um, because you look at the average cost of a robotic mower and what it takes to get that, the real actual cost, it's significantly high, right? So, um, with these new robotics that are coming out, the Platform X, you for the first time, it's RTK system, with AI built into it, so we don't have to install ground wire, and we're able to mobilize these a lot more, and to put them around, and it makes it logistically better.
Yeah, I noticed at the Equip Expo this year because, like you just mentioned, a lot of them have the ground wire in the
Yeah.
past. A lot of them still do, but I did notice a few brands this year where it's actually fully robotic, meaning you
Right.
don't have ground wire and it's actually seeing what's out in front of it. I was going to ask you, so one key thing that you learned from like your mentor, and one key thing that you learned from your running of Donnie's from there to this new company. What's one thing you're doing way different than you did the first time?
Right. That's a great question. I think that the biggest thing that I've learned was, just not giving up, and just thinking of different innovative ways. Under Ivan Giraldo, I've learned, the whole side of the commercial side. And there's so much to it than just going there and mowing. There's logistics, you got a fleet. And that's another thing that I wanted to bring up as well, is that with robotics, where we're shrinking down our crews, we're also shrinking down our fleet, right? So we're we're um we're really being a real big change. uh yeah, I think that's what I've learned.
Yeah, and then as far as going from Donnie's to this one, what's one thing you're doing like completely different besides the robotics?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So Donnie's landscaping was just your traditional residential landscaping company, right? Just all gas equipment. Coming from now, it's fully electric and 100% robotic. We do have electric push mowers, but those are just for certain areas, in certain circumstances where we need to mow, some certain areas where the robotic can't get to. But those are very, very minimal. Um, but I think I think the biggest change is it's a good question. Good question. It's because I've learned a lot, it's been an experience, like, I live out here, no friends. It's 100% business, and I think Austin is one of the best cities here in America. It's the city is so vibrant, the energy and the people here are so amazing, and to start it here is just is a very good opportunity for me and teach and help people who are in the landscaping industry. And I always like to say this is we're making landscaping cool again, right? Because we don't even know what the type of jobs we're going to create in the future.
Hmm.
We don't know what the future looks like, but we are the future. So we're gonna figure it out. But you know, we want to create thousands of jobs in the future, and be a knowledge and be a great resource to everyone in the community.
Yeah, I think you're in the right city for kind of an innovative, outside the norm company. So I think Austin will treat you well. I would just make sure you're marketing yourself and fully highlighting all the stuff you're talking about in this podcast. So, the all electric stuff, the equipment, using the robotics, just market yourself in such a way that you're telling your story that you're telling us today just as good online, and in your in person sales efforts and all that stuff. Travis, what do you think?
We're living in a time where the evolution of the technology and the tools and the things are happening so fast. It's so important for organizations to pay attention to what's out there and at least get an understanding of it and start becoming familiar with what does it mean to the industry, what does it mean to my organization, how can I leverage it for better, or how will the competition leverage it against me, how will the market leverage it against me, how could it disrupt us, because as it goes on longer, it's going to be tougher to integrate. So I loved hearing that story about Clean Scapes being innovators and thinking
Oh
outside of the
yeah.
box and bringing that in early, and then you being able to leverage those knowledge and skills and talents that and the expertise out of that for a whole new company. Just a beautiful transition. I love seeing that.
Right. And Clean Scapes is a very great company and they got a very bright future. And I wanted to focus more on the residential side, and my whole thought process is why doesn't every home not have a robotic mower on their yard? That they can have one on their yard. Well, what are the reasons why they don't have it? Well, they don't understand the technology. They're not being sold on it. They don't even know exist. You go to some properties, they're like, what?
Yeah.
What are this?
We ran into companies that don't even know software exists to help them manage their companies. They're still doing it all on paper. So
Yeah, it's more.
I believe the robotics thing.
Yeah, we're sitting here talking about some of this stuff and not realizing too, like you just said, that there's a lot of homeowners that they're not in this industry, so therefore they're not reading up on this stuff. They're not going to the expo, so they really don't have any idea. So you are right. It's part of our job really is to educate them on what's out there in 2024, and also knowing that in 2025 you're going to have to educate them again because it's going to
Yeah.
change.
Well, yeah, and their landscaping person that they have, they're going in a John Deere, and it's an easy way, right? It's easy to go on the market, buy a 2500 John Deere and buy a couple gas weed eaters, and it's easy, from there. You don't have to worry about a huge liability because there's, decades and decades of data that backs it that hey, this is a very reliable machine and it works. It gets the job done, and that's with robotics, and that's where it's like, "Oh, I don't know if it will work, but in long term it will work." There's robotic mowers that were placed in 2017, 2018 that are still going today, right? All you got to do is just sharpen the blades or replace the blades, right? That's it. Make sure it's being charged and make sure everything is running good.
Do have a little bit of a different question. So a lot of times our guests on this podcast are our age, meaning in our 40s for Travis and I. You're obviously younger, a young entrepreneur, getting your feet wet, getting started. Do you have any questions for us as you get started?
So the question I have is, what advice would you give yourself if you can go back in time and you were in the position of, in today's time? What kind of advice would you tell yourself
So,
through your experience living?
yeah, so I started Atlanta Corp in 2007, so a little bit different time frame than now, but not that different. So I was hungry, super, super hungry. My wife and I started this company, but I even though I'm detail oriented, I probably did not set systems up to scale early enough on. So earlier when we were not recording, I'd asked you a little bit about like software and stuff like that. So the one thing I would have done a little bit differently early on. So we had kind of an exponential growth. We started with like 2, and we were to 20 employees really, really quick, and then to 40 also very quick. If you don't have the systems and stuff in place up front, you will scale chaos. So you can have everything else on the outside looking kind of neat, but you'll have chaos inside your company. Ours, thankfully, wasn't that bad, but I do realize that had I had working systems in place up front, I could have scaled even quicker and cleaner. So, one thing I would say is put that stuff into place now, even though you're a 1, 2, 3 man show, knowing that your goal is not to stay there. Your goal is to be at 10, 20, 30, 100 employees. And if you can build those scales and stuff now, gosh, you'll be light years ahead in 2 to 3 years. So you're just be sure you're innovative on the service line, being robotic. Make sure you're also innovative on the back end as well, is what I would advise. To go into that a little bit more, make sure you're marketing. Obviously, you've got to make sales in the next few months to make the business work. I would make sure you're marketing. I wouldn't shy away from. Are you tech savvy at all? I'm assuming you are.
Yeah.
So make sure you do the high quality video, the high quality social media. Try to garner some attention. Do more podcasts like this. Get your name out there in the Austin community, because that's the kind of stuff. If nobody else knows your story, you're just another company. Obviously, you've got robotic at the front of it, which will garner some attention. It's going to make people stop scrolling for a second, but don't skip on your marketing, paid ads, and stuff like that, especially in the beginning. One of the things we're passionate about is obviously improving this industry as a whole, lawn care, landscape, tree,
Right.
but also just the entrepreneurship in general. So that's why I liked your story from the get go. You're young. First off, thank you for your service. And then second, I commend you for, having the business, trying it, even though it didn't work out, you went and sought a mentor, you learned from the mentor, and you're picking up the pieces and starting over. So that's what entrepreneurship is all about, essentially,
Right.
is taking that risk and doing it. So you've taken the risk. But yeah, no, I'm very excited to see what you do with it.
Yeah.
Well, Dontae, we appreciate your time, appreciate your service. Look forward to seeing what you do with this. And Travis, thank you as always, man. And if you guys like this podcast, you listeners, please share it. That's how we grow it. We don't run ads. We don't. Travis and I ain't making any money doing this either, by the way. So we do want you to share it. If you like it, if you don't like it, then turn us off. Thank you, guys.